It was a bit of a strange wedding. Um, First of all, from the outside, uh, the musicians union were on strike, and so there wasn't any band playing. Babe's uncles, one of whom played the violin and the other the piano, volunteered to provide what music they could, and so that was a little empty in the big Astor Hall. I had worked the night before out at Staten Island. I think I had the uh, the 4 to 12 midnight shifts, and then I had to take the train from Staten Island back to the city. So I was a little sleep deprived. Uh, Babe's father was undoubtedly uh, thinking about his cancer, and Babe was thinking about this is going to be a short honeymoon because the wedding was on Saturday. We had a honeymoon of Sunday, and then Monday she went back to school and I went back to the Navy. Nevertheless, we went through the motions, and we personally were satisfied that we were getting married. We didn't feel like this was only thrust upon us, but that we made a choice and we were happy with our choices. And so we tried to take as much pleasure as we could from it, and we had a proper midnight uh, ceremony of the two of us alone in the bedroom at the Astor, and we were feeling okay about it. But it was really very short. We slept late the next morning, and I don't know what we did about eating on that. I don't remember what we did about eating on Sunday, but early Monday morning, we were up. Babe went back to NYU, and I, in my sailor suit, took off for Staten Island and my job at the Swift refrigeration plant. Anyway, now is the time of the wait. We had no idea how long before I would get my assignment to go to school, but Babe and I, were busy as newlyweds. I mean, I even went to some of her classes with her at NYU, and we took advantage of the little time that we had. The way it worked out, there was a notice up on the bulletin board in March that this group would be going to our assigned class, and that was in Chicago at the Navy Pier, which is in downtown Chicago. And we were going to go by train, and the time for leaving was, I don't remember the date, but it was fairly late in March. So This was another time for me to say goodbye to my folks and to Sol and Ray and Babe, and get ready to pack my stuff in my sea bag. We still were carrying everything wrapped in the hammock. That was the way you traveled, but I never did get to use the hammock. It was only for carrying my sea bag and stuff. Anyway, time came and we lined up outside for buses to take us to the train station. I guess it was Grand Central that we left from, and off we were going on this start of the adventure to become proficient in repairing and maintaining radar equipment. We left on the train, and because there were a pretty big load of seamen there, and we had about 12 to 15 hour trip, we figured the best thing to do would be to gamble a bit. So there was some card games set up and a crap game, and I met a gentleman, and we started to play together. That is, in the same game. And this person turned out to be Stanley Selzer, a Jewish sailor from the Bronx. And since we had close ties in that area of the Bronx, and we had common experiences, we quickly became friends, and in the game, we got into this crap game, and we got lucky, and we both won quite a bit of money. At the time, I can't remember, but our sailor suits were very low in the amount of pockets that they had, and the pockets were very small. There was a pocket up on your shirt that you wore, but that didn't hold anything. And then there was a pocket in your pants, not on the side, but more like a watch pocket in the front that you could push something in. Well, unfortunately, we won more money than we had pocket room. So our pockets were really stuffed, and we played most of that night, but then went to sleep and arrived the next morning in Chicago. And the bus took us, another bus took us to the Navy Pier, and we saw the area that we were going to live in for the next month. This assignment was for the first month of the 11-month program. And basically it was a kind of refresher course to get everybody up to a certain speed, since they didn't know how much we knew and what where to start in. They figured they'd go through a brief period of covering the basics. Well, I had just finished a 6-month training with the Signal Corps, and I knew this stuff cold, but Stanley was not in his element. I think that he had somebody take the Eddie test for him. He's just going in and signing his name as Stanley Selzer and taking the test, and that's how he passed. That's how Stanley even got there. But this month of a refresher course for him was very, very difficult because he started from scratch. I kind of took him under my wing, and after the day program in the late afternoon, I would go over things with him and try to explain what I could so that he would get through this month and get something out of it. He was smart enough, he just didn't have any of this background. But somehow he got through that month. Well, before we get through with the month, I want to get through the first 6 days. When we were on this base, we were sleeping in triple-decker bunks, and we were in a gymnasium, and then our classrooms were elsewhere. But there wasn't a huge crowd. It wasn't like Pier 6. There were more like 50 or 60 sailors instead of 2,000. And I felt comfortable about sleeping there. It also was very clean, quite different from Pier 6 in Staten Island. Our big problem was, what are we going to do with all this money in our pockets? We had no way to spend it there, and we couldn't do anything until our first Liberty period, which was going to be Saturday afternoon. We worked all week. I think we got there on a Monday, and we worked through till Saturday morning. Then we had to make up our beds. Our beds had to be, the bedding had to be so tightly placed that you could drop a quarter on it and it would bounce. It couldn't just fall and lay there. And our nails had to be clean, and we had to be close shaven. Otherwise, we couldn't go on Liberty. And you had to pass a bosun's test. He had to approve you, otherwise you couldn't go on Liberty. In the meantime, I had found out which were the better restaurants and in Chicago, and which were the most expensive. We were anxious to spend our money in a nice restaurant. So I had made a reservation. I think it was the Pump Room that we had a reservation for. Very elegant restaurant in a fancy hotel. And both of us finally passed our test, and we were given an assignment that we given approval that we could leave, and we were off from Saturday afternoon until Monday morning. And our concern was to have a good time at dinner and get rid of some of this loot that was filling our pockets. Anyway, we looked around Chicago, walked around a bit, and by 6 o'clock we were ready to go to dinner. And we went to the pump room in our sailor suits, looking very handsome. And that was in March of 1943. And sailors in Chicago were considered to be very important and to be looked up to and to be helped by the public in any way possible. So that if you were walking down the street, a car might pull up and say, "Hey guys, where you going? Can I take you somewhere?" I mean, it was that's the feeling was wonderful. And we got a very warm welcome at the pump room, and got a nice table, and we ordered a expensive meal. Well, first we had drinks, then we had a shrimp cocktail, then we had a steak with all the trimmings, and a dessert of some kind, I don't remember what, and some cognac after dinner. And when we were all finished, we asked for the check. And the waiter came over and he said, "Gentlemen, somebody saw you two sailors enjoying your dinner so much, they wanted to be a part of it and join in by paying for your dinner. So there is no check." And we say, "Shucks, we're stuck here with no pocket room." But we left there with the same cash that we started with. Well, Monday morning came fast enough, and we were off to the races again with our classes. For me, as I said, it was very easy because this was stuff I knew. I had a book with me. It was a book about President Lincoln. Steffens who had written that book. But anyway, it was a big book, many hundreds of pages, and I thought that that would occupy my time off out of class, because I didn't have to study or do anything, but I did have Stanley to help. So that limited my reading a little bit. But anyway, we got through another week, and again passed the test to go on Liberty on Saturday after 12 noon. And we had made a reservation at a French restaurant. And this time, luckily, we were allowed to pay. But it was very enjoyable. And it was also nice. Stanley and I were becoming close buddies. I mean, he was sleeping over me. uh, and we were close all day, and I was helping him after the periods, school periods were over. And he was doing okay, and we were happy in our situation. Anyway, that's how we finished the second week. And during that week, we found out that we were invited, all the sailors were invited to a country club in a little bit west of Chicago. And we were going to be staying in people's homes, broken up, one sailor to each home, and having I think we had dinner there at the home, and then we went to the club, and there was some kind of dance. And for the sailors, most of the other guys, it was a great opportunity to meet girls. But me being a newlywed, I wasn't too interested in that part of it. But I remember that I was fascinated by what a Gentile, that is non-Jewish home, was like in Chicago. And they had a husband, wife, a daughter, and a younger, the daughter was probably around 18, and the son was probably 15 or 16. And I remembered his interest in reading the Sunday funnies, which I thought was kind of juvenile. By that time, when I was his age, I was reading the New York Times, and on Sunday, the news of the week section, and worrying about or thinking about what I could learn of how the war was going on, and I wasn't interested in funnies. But anyway, we had a pleasant time on this weekend. There was the dance at the club, and which as I say, I wasn't very interested in, but I participated, and it was a nice way to spend a day and a half away from the base. We had one more weekend to go, and we decided that the baseball season, this was we had come into the first few days of April, and the baseball season was opening up, and we thought we'd take advantage and go to the ball game. So that was our last weekend, and we went and saw the ball game. And at the ball game, we were kind of picked up by a gentleman who invited us to go to his bar for some drinks after the game. I remember him because of his colorful language. Every other word was fuck, and his favorite expression was, I guarantee it. So if he tell you something, he said, honestly, this is the way it was, I guarantee it. And he guaranteed that he was going to take us to the best bar for a few drinks. And he had already had a few drinks, so we didn't know what to make of it, but we figured, what the hell, we're bigger than he is, what could we lose? So we went to the bar and we had a few drinks, and then he told us about this wonderful dog who could do these wonderful tricks that he had taught the dog how to do, and he fucking it. But we had to go to his house to see the dog. So we went with him to his house, and sure enough, there was a dog, but he didn't do one trick. No matter how much he had guaranteed, the dog did not cooperate. So it wasn't too long that we said goodbye. That was late. We were going to some restaurant for dinner anyway. We still had some money left. And that was the end of our last weekend in Chicago. I just remembered something important that I didn't tell you about, and that was what we did in the Saturday afternoons after we left the base. We were told that there was a USO at a particular place not too far from our base, and that if we went there, we could get information about what we might do for the rest of that day or on Sunday. So we went to the USO, and we were welcomed by young ladies who were there to greet sailors and offer us coffee and donuts and get any information that they could supply us with that we wanted to know. I noticed this booth where sailors were recording records, small records. I guess they were 45s going at 78 RPM. And you could record about a 3-minute message, and then they would mail it home for you. I thought that was terrific. So I asked if I could send a record, and they said yes. And I remember I started one to Babe, and I actually said, "Babe, dearest," and then I don't remember what's on it, but we have a record of it. And I did the 3 minutes and sent it off. And I said, next Saturday I'll be here at the same time and I'll send you another message. So on the following Saturday, the first thing that we did was go to this USO, and I wanted to send another record. But this time I had taken time to think about what I was going to say and send something that was meaningful. And I know that you probably have heard those records, or you can get them to listen to, but I did spend some time, and I did my best to make them meaningful to the recipients. On the third week, I made another record, and I think that I sang a few songs on that one. One was a Russian song that I had learned at the Forest House from Eli Spivak, who is a member of the band and a performer. And probably another song that I don't recall right now. But anyway, that did take up some of the afternoons of the time of the Saturdays that we had. And I'm glad we did, because we have a record of what I was thinking and doing at that time.
This comes from Chicago Servicemen Center.
Babe, dear, I have already sent home 2 trivial records, and so now I want to make a more serious one. It may be a little different from what you expect, but I'm writing this mainly to record some of my present ideas. They should be interesting to look back on. As the President is accustomed to make a State of the Union address to Congress, so would I like to record the state of our Union in this April of 1943. We have been married now 3 months, and considering my present occupation, we were lucky to have 2.5 months together. That was a happy time for us, but I think that our future life together will be happier still. Because for us, even though we are so young, marriage meant more than the consummation of a beautiful passion. I can honestly say that ours was a meeting of minds and of character. These things will fuse together and make the two of us a single entity. So if left to ourselves, or helped by the provident hand of beneficent good fortune, our future will be as perfect as the most optimistic storyteller dreamed of when he wrote, "They lived happily ever after." When the President speaks of our national affairs, he cannot help but say something of the conditions of the surrounding world. And so I want to prophesy, if I can, upon what sort of seas our marital vessel will sail. Writers of all the ages have been able to say that these are troublesome times, and that great changes are taking place. So I'll take the liberty of saying the same thing, but I'll try and be more specific. We are now going through a great revolution, in which the idea of government is being changed. Tomorrow we'll see strong central governments operating under the principles of planned economy. The present struggle came about through the fact that some nations arrived at that position before others and try to take advantage of their strength. The control of the central government and the use to which it is put is obviously of paramount importance. We have already seen evidence of this very thing in Germany and in Russia. Unfortunately, this war will not decide that, and so I can see an even greater struggle coming to determine what class shall control. So because of these gloomy prospects, I am very glad that our marital ship is well caulked and seaworthy, my darling. Our oars will be our combined abilities and intelligence. With them we should come through in pretty good shape. And when it's all over, we'll be able to look back to at least an interesting life together. I hope it will be long as well as interesting, and as happy for you as I know it will be for me.